August 27, 2003. Police enter a quiet home in Milford, New Hampshire, and make a gruesome discovery. Inside lies the decomposing body of 50-year-old Paul Hurle, wrapped in a tarp and carpet. It's clear this was no accident, and the only other person in the house during the time of death, his 17-year-old son, Douglas. The case goes cold for over 2 decades, until 2025, when shocking new evidence pushes police to finally make an arrest. So, who did they take into custody after 21 years? Comment your guess below and subscribe for more interesting videos. On August 27, 2003, a routine welfare check in Milford, New Hampshire revealed a deeply unsettling scene. Officers arrived at 425 Nashua Street, a modest residence that had raised concerns due to a lack of recent contact with its occupant. Inside, they discovered the decomposing body of 50-year-old Paul Hurle. The state of the remains made clear that Paul had been deceased for several days. The discovery immediately prompted a full-scale investigation. Law enforcement quickly secured the property and designated it an active crime scene. Initial observations pointed to foul play. The condition of the body and the surrounding area left no doubt that this was not a natural death.
An autopsy conducted shortly afterward confirmed that Paul had died as a result of blunt force trauma. Although the medical examiner determined the cause of death, the specific weapon involved was never publicly disclosed. Investigators worked to narrow down the time of death, ultimately estimating it had occurred sometime between August 23rd and August 27th. This narrow window intensified the urgency of the case. Detectives began piecing together Paul's final days, aware that each hour lost could jeopardize the integrity of vital evidence. The house, once intended as a fresh start, was now at the center of a growing mystery. For investigators, the question was no longer whether Paul's death was suspicious, but who was responsible and why. Paul Hurle was born on November 16, 1952, in Massachusetts. He made his living as an antiques dealer and, at one point, had been married. Though the marriage ended in divorce, Paul remained a committed father to his teenage son, Douglas. That bond, however, was increasingly strained in the years leading up to 2003. Douglas had begun experiencing serious personal issues. In Massachusetts, he had fallen into troubling patterns, associating with negative influences and becoming entangled in legal problems. These concerns weighed heavily on Paul. Wanting to protect his son and steer him toward a better path, Paul decided to make a significant change. In early 2003, Paul relocated to Milford, New Hampshire. He chose a home at 425 Nashua Street, where he hoped to open an antique shop in one part of the house, while providing a fresh start for Douglas in a quieter environment. The move reflected a father's hope, an attempt to remove his son from the circumstances that had derailed his progress. Despite the fresh surroundings, underlying issues persisted. Local authorities were called to the Milford residence multiple times in response to domestic incidents. These calls painted a picture of an unstable household. The new location had not erased old tensions. For Paul, the effort to create a stable and supportive home was real, but the peace he sought for his family ultimately remained out of reach.
Following the discovery of Paul Hurle's body on August 27, 2003, authorities launched an immediate investigation. They began by interviewing individuals who had recent contact with Paul, hoping to reconstruct the final days of his life. Through these inquiries, investigators learned that only Paul and his son Douglas had been present in the house during the estimated time of death. The investigation took an unexpected turn just hours after the body was found. Douglas, then 17 years old, was arrested in Massachusetts. He had been caught driving his father's 1995 Lincoln without authorization. In addition to the unauthorized vehicle use, he was also charged with possession of a controlled substance.
Given the timing and the tension that had existed within the household, the arrest raised eyebrows. Despite the circumstances, law enforcement made the decision not to classify Douglas as a suspect. Their determination was based on the limited evidence available at the time. While the arrest and strained family dynamics were noted, investigators stated that there was insufficient cause to pursue charges directly related to Paul's death. Authorities expanded their inquiry, speaking with neighbors, friends, and anyone who might have seen or heard anything unusual. However, as weeks passed without a breakthrough, momentum faded. With no concrete suspects and a lack of forensic clarity, the investigation began to lose direction. By the end of the year, the case, once treated with urgency, was already showing signs of going cold.
In 2009, 6 years after the death of Paul Hurle, the case was formally added to the New Hampshire Department of Justice's Cold Case Unit. While the designation acknowledged the unresolved nature of the investigation, it did not immediately generate significant developments. For years, the file remained dormant, with no new evidence emerging and no additional suspects identified. That prolonged silence changed in 2025. Over 2 decades after Paul's body was discovered, the New Hampshire State Police Major Crime Unit partnered with the Cold Case Unit to revisit the investigation. Leveraging advancements in forensic science and analytical tools, they began re-examining the original evidence collected from the Milford crime scene. This renewed inquiry brought forward a critical document, a probable cause affidavit, that outlined previously overlooked or underexplored findings. One of the most significant revelations from this document was confirmation that only Paul and his son Douglas were present in the home during the time frame in which Paul died. This detail, while long suspected, now took on renewed weight in the context of modern forensic review. Although many aspects of the case remained unresolved, the re-examination injected new energy into the pursuit of justice. Years of inactivity gave way to a focused and determined effort to reevaluate each lead. What had once appeared to be a stagnant investigation was, for the first time in over 20 years, showing signs of movement. The cold case was no longer buried in the past. It had become active once more.
During the renewed investigation in 2025, forensic analysts turned their attention to overlooked physical evidence from the original crime scene. Among the most telling items was a blood-stained piece of carpet padding discovered outside the residence, specifically pushed out of the window of Douglas's bedroom. This detail, initially cataloged but not heavily emphasized in 2003, became a central focus of the forensic reassessment. Advanced testing was conducted on the carpet padding. Results revealed that Paul Hurle could not be excluded as the source of the blood. In contrast, Douglas was definitively excluded. Although the test did not prove exactly how or when the blood got there, it introduced a new dimension to the timeline and reinforced concerns about the events that had occurred inside the home. Investigators also re-examined how Paul's body was found, wrapped in both a tarp and a carpet within the house. This method of concealment, coupled with the fact that the body had remained undiscovered for several days, indicated an intent to obscure the death. The deliberate placement of the body raised new questions about what took place in those final hours. Adding to the timeline, Paul's last known communication was a phone call made shortly after 8 p.m. on August 23, 2003. That timestamp, paired with the evidence now under fresh scrutiny, dramatically narrowed the investigative window and strengthened the theory that key actions had occurred shortly after that final call. The case, once stagnant, was regaining clarity. On June 17, 2025, more than 2 decades after Paul Hurle's death, a breakthrough in the case finally led to an arrest. At age 39, Douglas Hurle was taken into custody by Massachusetts State Police in the town of Sault, Massachusetts. The arrest was executed under a warrant identifying Douglas as a fugitive from justice, stemming from developments in the long-dormant 2003 homicide investigation.
The charges brought against Douglas were for second-degree murder. According to detectives involved in the renewed investigation, the delay in making an arrest had been due to insufficient evidence at the time of Paul's death. Over the years, despite the mounting suspicions surrounding Douglas, the case remained uncharged. It wasn't until new witness testimony, or information previously withheld, was finally brought to light that the legal threshold for arrest was met. Authorities did not elaborate on the nature of the new evidence or testimony, but emphasized that it had been pivotal in moving the case forward. With this new foundation, law enforcement reclassified Douglas not merely as a person of interest, but as the accused in a decades-old crime. Following his arrest, Douglas faced extradition proceedings to New Hampshire, where the case originated. He appeared before a judge in Essex County, where the legal process began its next phase. As the paperwork moved through official channels, the focus turned once again to a courtroom, this time with formal charges finally in place. After 21 years, the case was no longer cold. The arrest of Douglas Hurle marks a pivotal moment in a case that remained unsolved for over 20 years. Yet, even with charges filed, the journey toward justice is far from over. Douglas now awaits trial, and the full truth behind what happened inside 425 Nasha Street in August 2003 remains a matter for the courts to determine. Paul Hurle's body had gone undiscovered for days, concealed within the very home he had hoped would offer his family a new beginning. Despite earlier reports of domestic tension and troubling behavior, the original investigation struggled to establish responsibility, leaving critical questions unanswered for years. This prolonged uncertainty weighed heavily on those connected to the case. It serves as a stark reminder of the emotional cost borne by families left in limbo and by communities where violence goes unresolved. The passage of time did not erase the need for answers, it only deepened it. Re-examining cold cases with modern forensic tools and renewed focus has the potential to bring long-delayed clarity. In this case, it reshaped what once seemed unsolvable. As Douglas prepares to face trial, the impact of reopening this case continues to ripple outward, through courtrooms, through family histories, and through time. As the legal process moves forward and new details emerge, one thing remains clear. Justice delayed does not have to mean justice denied. Subscribe to follow this case and others like it as we continue uncovering the truths time tried to bury. Who was arrested in connection with Paul Hurle's case? Comment your answer below. And don't forget to subscribe for more true crime stories.